Hello there. Here we go again. Yet more demands we extend the Brexit process. Firstly, please give this video a like to give my channel a boost, and I'm always uploading new videos, so please do check back daily. Now we have another pro-EU politician pushing for a Brexit extension. Do you remember David Lidington, former Tory MP for Aylesbury and once the Cabinet Minister and Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, and therefore Theresa May's de facto deputy when she was Prime Minister? Well, he was talking to the Dutch evening newspaper NRC Handelsblad and said that the UK should extend the Brexit Implementation Period beyond the 31st of December. And that's either a naive position to take, stupidity, or worse. Lidington told the paper that the current crisis makes an extension inevitable, and he also said that there is not enough bandwidth to pay attention to Brexit in Whitehall or the European Commission and the major capitals. Well, the EU seems to have enough bandwidth to be talking about stuff other than the crisis at the moment. For example, the EU Commission has just published a study into geographical indications. You know, the bit where only certain producers can call their produce by the name of where it was made. Champagne, cheeses and pork pies, that sort of thing. Bandwidth to do that. Then there's eScalar, which was launched this month. From the EU Commission web pages it says, "The Commission is launching eScalar, a new investment approach developed together with the European Investment Fund that will support venture capital and growth financing for promising companies, enabling them to scale up in Europe and help reinforce Europe's economic and technological sovereignty." Now, this initiative is being followed through on because the EU sees it as a driver in recovering from the economic fallout from the current crisis. Also, this month the EU Commission announced, "The Commission is opening calls for proposals to finance more than €160 million in joint defence industrial projects in 2020 and announcing 7 new defence research projects selected for more than €19 million of funding under the 2019 budget." Then there's the accession talks it's been holding with budding member states. So the EU does have bandwidth to look beyond the crisis now and into the future. And so does the UK. Lidington also said that we now suddenly live in a different world, and that, "I hope both sides understand that now is the time to resist protectionism. We know that after the stock market crash of 1929, the trade barriers of that time worsened the depression." Now, according to Naomi Smith from the EU-loving campaign group Best for Britain, we should all listen to Mr. Lidington. "He will be fully aware of how badly talks will have been disrupted," she said. "Neither us nor the EU have the capacity to conduct such complicated negotiations at the moment. That means without an extension, both sides will end up with a bad deal come the end of this year." Now, both of those people will be acutely aware that were the UK to ask for an extension, the EU would gleefully snap it up, because any extension is pure gold for Brussels. Once agreed, the Eurocrats would smile sweetly, sit back and say that the first thing on their agenda is the EU 27 economic recovery, before any EU-UK trade talks can start in earnest. Brussels would then delay and delay, passing laws, rules and regulations over which we would have no control but have to obey to the letter, but all the while stonewalling us over Brexit. They would dispatch their people around the world to seal post-crisis deals before we could get a look in. And throughout all that time, we would have to sit on the sidelines and wait for the day when the EU once again wanted to talk serious Brexit. and we would forever be forced to get permission from Brussels for every action we wanted to take to help our own economy and businesses drag us out of the financial mire caused by this crisis. The UK government would be hamstrung by EU rules at every turn. And the EU would ensure that we towed their line for everything, or face the European Courts of Justice. And in the background, the EU super trawlers would continue to plough up our seabed and hoover up all our fish. And any Brexit talks we did hold would continue to be strung out by Brussels with delay after delay, excuse after excuse, until a time of their choosing. And I reckon that time would be in the final few months or even weeks before any extension ran out anyway, so that they could foist any terrible deal on us that they wanted to. The only side to get a good deal out of an extension would be Brussels, and everyone who thinks about it knows it. That is the future of the UK, should we be stupid enough to extend the negotiations beyond the 31st of December this year. And if the likes of Lidington do not understand this, then we're lucky he's now no longer in a position of power. And if he's not as naive as his comments might lead you to think, then he's a dangerous anti-UK, pro-EU politician. So again, we're lucky to have got rid. I would remind people to think back just a few months to the lead up to our legal departure from the EU on the 31st of January, just 2.5 months ago. When Boris took over as PM on the 24th of July last year, he wrested control, got his general election, won it with a very healthy majority, and then did the so-called impossible of getting Theresa May's deal changed. In a few short months he transformed the whole Brexit game and came up with something that was light years distant and better than the pile of manure his predecessor had deposited in the halls of Number 10. And he and his team have set new UK laws to take advantage of this situation. We must keep pressing that advantage home. I still remember the looks on the faces of the EU Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, and the President of the EU Council, Charles Michel, as they signed the withdrawal agreement treaty watched over by the EU Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier. They did not look exactly cock-a-hoop about it, did they? But they would be delighted if they were signing up to a Brexit extension. There are now 69 days to go until we reach the 30th of June, the crunch point by which a decision has to be made to extend, or, under the Withdrawal Agreement Treaty, we leave the implementation period on the 31st of December, deal or no deal. That still leaves 6 months to complete a deal. One we should obviously only sign up to if it's good enough for us. The pro-EU lobby of rejoiners are trying to take back the agenda, and they must not be allowed to do so. Because they do not believe in the UK. They only believe in handing the entire country over, kit and caboodle, to Brussels. And they would be ecstatic if the EU was able to dismantle the UK during any Brexit Implementation Period extension. It would not worry them that the UK could take a massive economic hit in the process, as long as we somehow got to stay in their precious EU. And the only way for the rejoiners to engineer that is for them to somehow get the government to U-turn on this Brexit extension. Something we cannot allow to happen. Now, in other news, the annual inflation rate fell from 1.7% in February to 1.5% in March, and is now 0.5% below the government's target of 2%. But as we're obviously in difficult times, I expect the government will be relieved that inflation hasn't spiked up or turned into rampant deflation. The downward pressure came from falling prices for transport, as well as clothing and footwear. Upward pressure came from small rises in the price of alcohol and communications. I think that could be called the lockdown effect, don't you? Anyway, if you want to hear more from me, please don't forget to subscribe and also press that little bell, or you won't get any notifications. And if you want to see more of me, buy a mug with my mug on it. So what do you think about the Lidington call to extend Brexit? Please share and comment, and thank you for watching.